As far as, I do have a couple of things, just kind of announcements before we get started. So Spear, we got some additional funding for basically resiliency training. And, typically I've always done energy code training, and a building thermal envelope can only take you so far when you allow things like this. So this is just a needless 6-inch decorative horizontal exterior ledge bump out of stucco, which is really going to do nothing but catch rain and collect it in this wall assembly. This is even worse here, where this roof drains onto this roof, which drains into that same, this architect evidently likes his decorative ledges. He has one here and then one here. Luckily, this one here is going to catch, I don't know, 1,000 gallons of rain, because that stucco will eventually crack. And so this wall assembly, basically, I was like, oh man, this home is going to come with its own indoor mushroom garden in no time. And ultimately, man, some jurisdictions, I was talking to Stelzer with the city of Plano the other day, and based on plan review, so this plan review, they would obviously rejected this, but imagine if there weren't these horizontal bump outs and it was just a straight wall. Well, based on just the plan review of this home, there would automatically be a building inspection lab inspection assigned to this project. And so I know lots of the jurisdictions out there are not doing any sort of pre-stucco inspection. And I understand that budgets and staffing are such that adding an inspection is difficult. But if you're getting these types of stucco jobs, yes, this building thermal envelope can be great and all, but when this house needs a $100,000 repair in 5 years or needs to be bulldozed in 10, I don't care how much money they saved on energy for those first 5 years. So really, I'm hoping to increase resiliency by improving stucco installation in Texas. To me, I joke all the time, if I ever fall off the wagon and become a building official again, to me, you just simply add a weather resistant barrier inspection, and then that covers your stucco. So you can do the WRB and the lab at once, or, to help with the corrections, you could do it in 2 different inspections. But if you're not doing, if you're getting stucco installs like this in your jurisdiction, please let me know. I'd be happy. I have a stucco expert. I mean, this guy gets paid $1,000 an hour to go basically testify that builders didn't do this right. And that's why this home needs a $200,000 repair 3 years after it was built. And really things like this, if you can, a little added cost on the permit and an added inspection for your builders, if you can keep your builders out of a courtroom, which water intrusion is the #1 reason builders get sued, and a weather resistant barrier or lav inspection prior to stucco will reduce those lawsuits significantly. It would be a much easier pill for the builders in your community to swallow by adding this simple inspection. But if your guys really don't know what to look for, and now granted, so stucco is about a paragraph long in the IRC, but it references ASTM C968. It references a handful of standards in there. One of them is 167 pages long. Well, do I expect this particular jurisdiction here to go from this type of lab to a 100% compliant with all the ASTM standards overnight? Of course not. However, what we can do is get 2 layers underneath the lab. We can get, these decorative ledges, okay, fine, but it has to be at a 45. It cannot be horizontal. It has to be such that it sheds bulk water. Weep screed, so that when water does get in the wall assembly, it can drain. Proper head flashing on the windows. So I'm in the process of developing kind of a Cliff Notes 101 stucco guide that's going to take a lot of those technical terms in the standards and in the code, and just put them in layman's terms that the stucco contractor, the new building inspector can understand. You can give those out on the job. I haven't finished. I mean, I actually haven't even started, but that's in the works. But what is ready is a detailed hour and a half stucco presentation with an hour of field training. So you get 2.5, 3 hours of ICCCUs. There's no cost to your city or your building department. I will come anywhere in Texas and deliver this training for you for free. If we can do a 2021 energy code training while I'm there, if you want, get you more CEUs, I can bring everybody 2021. I have a whole case of stacks of cases of 2021 IECC code books with the commentary. But anyway, please reach out. Free training, free ICCUs, and it's not I wouldn't be there. I'm not there to tell you how to do your job. I'm there to hopefully help you make incremental improvements, and ultimately, improve the resiliency and the the longevity of the homes in your jurisdiction. This home right here will need to be demolished in 10 years. Or I mean, so imagine a firefighter and a teacher buy this $300,000 home. They got approved for a $300,000 mortgage. Well, 5 years from now, when this wall is full of mold and rot, and that's quite literally a 6-figure repair. They simply are not going to be able to afford to do it. So you run down to Walmart and get you a can of that Flex Seal and spray it on there, and you live with the indoor air quality problems from the mold that grows in this wall. And ultimately, that house will last maybe 40 years before it's just, you can't do anything with it anymore. And trying to alleviate some of that. There's certainly some jurisdictions that dot every I and cross every T when it comes to this, but then there's some that just green tag this type of thing. And I'm happy to help everyone in between. And I understand we can't make it perfect overnight, and I'm certainly not approaching it that way. But please let me know if I can help you out on that. So let's get back to where are we at on the slide? So today I'm happy to announce one of the code officials really doing a good job is Robert Polanco in Pflugerville. And he sent me an email the other day. He'd been having trouble getting architects and engineers and contractors to fill out the COMcheck completely and accurately. And he sent me a link to this video and said, man, this is a great video. This guy, I mean, this is what I'm going to require. And I was like, oh, hey, I know Steve real well. He actually gave some of this training to our energy code ambassadors. We talked about all this. And long story short, what we're going to talk about this morning is COMcheck and how you need to get a COMcheck filled out. Now, Steve has already developed this video for the city of Houston. He is on the webinar today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the video. He has a few things that we'll hop off the video, and he's going to do some screen sharing and show you a few additional resources he's come up with. And we'll pause the video a bunch of times in between. It's a 59-minute video, but we have 90 minutes of CEUs today. So I'm sure we'll go about the full 90 minutes. So you will get 0.15 CEUs. You know what, without any further ado, let me go ahead and get started. Steve, let me give Steve a plug first. Steve, I mean, he has really transformed energy code compliance with the city of Houston. I mean, he's really done fantastic work down there. And a lot of it's, training, plan review, and inspection staff. But a lot of it is frankly just demanding more from the permit applicant. And we're not talking about Title 24 California crazy bureaucracy over the top. No. We're just talking about, in the COMcheck box, when it tells about give details, you can't just say requirement will be met, or you can't just leave it blank. And so, as the code officials on the call, make your plan review folks' life and your inspectors' life a whole lot easier these architects and engineers are getting paid good money. There is no reason why they cannot fill this stuff out accurately. So let's go ahead and get started without further ado. And we'll, like I said, pause it many times along the way, but let's go.
The current code here, 2015 IECC International Energy Conservation Code, and it's COMcheck Workshop. So just a quick bit of history. The origin of the codes basically started appearing in the 1600s. I love this. Boston prohibited chimneys made from wood in 1630. Isn't that great? What an idea. Then we have the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, which was founded in 1894. I didn't really know we had air conditioning at the time, and they probably had perhaps a different name in 1894, but at any rate, the big one came out, Standard 90, in 1975. And then the first model code for energy conservation came out in 1981, and 30 years ago. There you go. But who's counting? And in the local ordinance situation, Texas adopts International Energy Conservation Code 2015 as state law in 2016. Okay, so we've had this in effect for a few years. Local jurisdictions are responsible for energy code implementation and enforcement of this law. And Houston adopted it as well in 2016. And then building code enforcement enforces the City of Houston construction codes for both residential and commercial construction. We're talking about commercial today. So why are we here? Beginning January 1st, in a few months, plans submitted with incomplete COMcheck reports will be rejected at pre-screen by our permit techs as they review for the completeness of the plan submittals before sending the plan review. Pre-screen is looking for quantity, not quality. If you have enough quantity, then plan reviewers will judge the quality of the reports. So disclosure here, this class is to inform you about COMcheck reports and how Houston Plan Review will review them. It is not about how to completely navigate COMcheck. And the good thing is informing.
And just FYI, there are PNNL and DOE. There are a handful of how to completely navigate COMcheck's webinar. That's out there on YouTube and on the building code on DOE's website. If you need links to those videos or can't find them, certainly let me know. We recently did 2 full hours of nothing but lighting control requirements in the 2021. So this type of information is out there, but this video is more about how to get that COMcheck correct.
About COMcheck will inform you about the commercial energy code somewhat. And this is not about teaching you the entire energy code, but you might learn something you don't already know. So why we're here again, we enforce the City of Houston construction codes, and training is necessary for that. So for a comprehensive plan review, all code requirements should be incorporated in the design and construction documents. This is coming from the commentary of the code. All of the project information, including specifications, scope calculations, and detailed drawings, should be submitted. So that code compliance can be verified. So that's kind of the process. So we, in an effort to be clear with everyone, a statement on the construction documents such as all insulation levels shall comply with the 2015 edition of the IECC. Okay, so let's just make a note, say, hey, builders, looking at the plans, everything is going to comply with the code. Nope. Not an acceptable substitute for showing the required information in the plans. Okay. In fact, a certification on the COMcheck documents with the designer's seal is also not an acceptable substitute for completing the inspection checklist.
Have anything? So lots of times.
Real quick, the structure of the
lots of times that inspection checklist is is misunderstood to be for one group or the other, or, I mean, my understanding, and I want to get your input on that real quick, Steve. I don't remember if you covered more, but to me, that inspection checklist is for three people. It's for the designer, the plan reviewer, and the inspector. It's to be triple checked. Did you anything to add on that, Steve?
Yeah, you bet. What I found was that the inspection checklist blank is worthless. Absolutely worthless.
Yeah.
Our inspectors are not taking that blank inspection checklist and using that to inspect projects for the energy code. I'm sorry,
No.
wait a minute. Did I just reveal a big bad secret or something, Jason? I mean,
No, it's
they're
just too tedious. You can't. You do not have time to do that.
Useless.
Yes.
So, I'm sorry that COMcheck decided to use that title. Maybe the next version needs to be plan review and inspection checklist. Oh, did I just insert a couple of words? I'm so sorry.
But really, it's more on the design side. It's that, hey, designers, y'all make sure you're checking.
Yep.
Right. Awesome. All right, here we go.
Commercial provisions. There's 6 chapters, although the 6th one, reference standards, is, it's a chapter, but not much information there for you. Basically, it's 5 chapters of information. So chapter 1 is very clear that certain information is to be included on the construction documents. They have a list of 12 items, and of course, we may need more, but these 12 items are required by the code to be included in the drawings. And it's not the least bit unclear. And
Hey, Jason?
So they're to be delineated.
Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things, just for our audience, because I think they'll get a charge out of this, one of the reasons why we started with COMcheck and not ResCheck, okay? Basically, we have this same format of requirements for including items in the plans in ResCheck, okay?
Mhm.
But nobody wants to put the equipment on a set of house plans. I mean, it's just hilarious. It's like, no, we'll do this in the field, okay? And it's an inspection item, adios. And so anyway, I just wanted to share our strategy for why we started with COMcheck. Is because it's a commercial set of plans. We're dealing with, licensed designers, et cetera. Not that there aren't licensed designers with residential, but this was just going to be much easier to kind of get this going, starting with commercial.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not going to get this level of detail on residential plans. And for those of you on the 2021, it gets a whole lot pickier about air barrier, and that is air barrier location, ceiling details, all of that is added to this list for the 2021. But yeah, that was smart to start with the COMcheck, because it'd be like pulling teeth to make these kind of changes residentially. Okay, we'll get back to it.
And delineation includes stating why they do not apply due to an exception or exemption from the code provisions. And we'll explain that more clearly. These 12 requirements are indicated in COMcheck. So COMcheck is very helpful for making sure that those items are included in the documents which the code requires. So let me repeat. Delineation includes stating why the requirements do not apply to your project due to an exception or an exemption from the code provisions. And people will want to use exceptions and exemptions. All right, right after that, the code requires the building thermal envelope depiction, and quite simply says it shall be represented on the construction drawings. It's not the least bit unclear. The depiction is required, and come January 1st, we're going to be rejecting them until they show compliance. So this little sketch is kind of residential. Yes, this is required in both residential and commercial codes. So that's the expectation here. Oh, wait. You people have never rejected me for that before. Why are you suddenly doing it now? This is not fair. Well, okay.
Let me give you those of you that want to institute this, and again, and you hear nobody else requires this. Well, you can let them know the city of Houston requires it, the city of Pflugerville requires it, pretty sure Plano requires it. So the idea that no one is requiring this simply is not true.
Okay, let's just think of this as a grace period you've had since 2016, and sigh, it's coming to an end. Okay. From the top to plan review, here inside, enforcing the law. You do not need permission or direction from your supervisor to enforce the building codes. That's what you were hired to do. And our people will be getting trained between now and January 1st thoroughly on this particular subject. So moving forward, the commercial energy code, we want to understand the code. We want to understand COMcheck, and then we want to enforce the code with the result that buildings are built to perform as they should. Okay. Chapter 3 shows us how climate zones affect the code. So here's the map of the US, and you can see climate zones 1 through 7, and then you kind of don't see, because they don't have a map of Alaska, climate zone 8. Okay, so basically we have Texas pretty visible here, with actually 3 climate zones, but Houston down on the coast is in climate zone 2. Okay, so then when you go through the various listings, they have the state listing and the county listings, and we can clearly see that Harris County is in climate zone 2A. So, moving forward. This is very important. Many energy code provisions are specific to the climate zone, okay? And many energy code provisions have exceptions and exemptions based on the climate zone. So we want to tune into these. It can have a benefit for doing less work. At any rate, the main body of the code is Chapter 4. And there are, this shows the 3 pathways and the fact that all 3 of them have mandatory requirements. So the top right, ASHRAE 90.1 is an energy standard, and COMcheck has an ASHRAE version. Then the prescriptive provisions in the code is the middle one, and that has a COMcheck. That's the kind of the normal COMcheck.
And just in case you don't cover this, Steve, I don't remember if you do, make sure you are not getting a shell permit. So ASHRAE 90.1, very rarely do you see that as a compliance path, but a savvy engineer or architect could conceivably, if they are designing a shell, ASHRAE 90.1, rather than just conditioned or exempt because it's unconditioned, they have a third category called semi-conditioned with greatly reduced building thermal envelope requirements because it's just going to be semi-conditioned, right? And a lot of times you will get in a shell project, they'll try to slip one in on you with a crummy building thermal envelope, and it'll show the green bar, it passes under ASHRAE 90.1, but then you'll look and it'll be for semi-conditioned warehouse space. Don't allow, and then they might say, well, it is going to be semi-conditioned. We're just installing freeze protection for the sprinklers. Well, yeah, that's true for the shell, but you know it's going to be finished out and conditioned later. So you cannot allow that shell to be permitted under the semi-conditioned requirements. And on the flip side, if you are getting a semi-conditioned warehouse that is truly going to stay a semi-conditioned warehouse or semi-conditioned storage, that you can save your designers and architects and contractors a lot of money by letting them know about, hey, did you know ASHRAE has a semi-conditioned exemption? I mean, you'll save hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it makes sense on a very minimal conditioning type that will stay that way build out or building.
And then there's a third pathway, which is a complicated energy modeling software. And probably only about 5% of projects in the city in building code enforcement use the approved energy modeling software, okay? So we're here to talk about COMcheck. This is what the code provision looks like. Oh, how boring. But there it is, 1, 2, and 3. Those are the 3 pathways we just talked about, okay? Now, what we need to understand is we pick only one approach. So for people using COMcheck, we have the IECC version and we have the ASHRAE version, okay? And that will be evident in the reports which version you went, okay? Provisions within the pathways are not interchangeable, but you'd be surprised how similar there are, okay? But at any rate, there are some slight differences. They're not interchangeable. Applicant must make a choice and take it all the way through, either in ASHRAE or IECC. And like we saw in that diagram, all 3 pathways have mandatory requirements which are not tradable. Okay, COMcheck can do some trading, and some things though are not, and the mandatory items are not. So this is what you know, kind of the story is in the ASHRAE publication. Just, you know, there's a little visual showing how things work there, not super important. Now here is our commercial checklist for permit application, okay? This is basically on the right. I've got, you know, which is kind of hard to read, is the checklist, and then I've got a blow up here that kind of, you know, goes over part of it. But our permit techs are using the checklist as our pre-screen, okay? So this is what we're talking about at pre-screen. And you can see energy code software is required for building projects, and where proposed scope of work is exempt, indicate on the plans why exempt. So you are already having your plans rejected if COMcheck is missing. All right, everybody on board? That's already happening. You got to have a COMcheck. So what we have kind of been, you've been in a grace period about is indicating on the plans where proposed scope of work is exempt. So, but that is required, it is in there, and come January 1st, it's going to be a major issue. Okay, so now let's talk about briefly here, project docs. Okay, where does the COMcheck belong? Okay, so on the right, you can see your screen version of trying to put stuff into project docs, and then blown up on the left.
And obviously this is city of Houston specific. You know, different cities have different software, or of course smaller cities, you have no pre-screen. I mean, you might be doing all of this yourself. You know, this will vary widely from city to city.
Left, you can see up in the very top part of documents, pretty much right away, we have forms. And then when you click forms, there is a folder called energy forms -codes. Okay, everybody see that? That's where we expect the COMcheck to be. Okay, so blow up. Place the COMcheck in the energy forms codes folder in project docs. This is where it will be reviewed in pre-screen. I've highlighted that in yellow. And I'm just reading to kind of like make a, you know, presentation here. Hopefully you're not being insulted. Now, what I did find out is that some drawings, some plan sets have had the COMcheck put on some of the drawing pages, okay? That's fine. But make sure the COMcheck is in the folder, okay? So you can have it in the drawings, which actually, we're happy that you have them in the drawings. That's great. Maybe that'll facilitate people on the construction site looking at them. I don't know. But for pre-screen purposes, we definitely need them in the energy forms folder. The permit techs are not going through the drawings. Okay, so they aren't going to see them in the drawings. And so heads up. All right. So let's start with the building envelope requirements part of the code. And quite simply, just to give you a brief overview, building envelope requirements are walls, roofs, windows, and leakage. Okay, that's what we're concerned about in the energy code. All right, this is one of the tables in the code showing R value for insulation for the various components: roof, walls, walls below grade, floors, slabs on grade floors, and whatever's on the bottom there that I can't even read. And then you can see the climate zones run along the top. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 8 along the top. See that? And then for instances, for an instance on roofs, I've circled insulation entirely above roof deck, for instance, okay? And you can see where it intersects under climate zone 2. We need R25 CI for group R and all other occupancies, okay? All right, so that's kind of an indication for you of climate zone and the various different requirements per climate zone. So you can kind of look around in here and see there's different numbers in the different concerns in the different climate zones. All right. Then this slide indicates kind of the first provision where there's an exemption, all right? So low energy buildings are allowed to be exempt from the building thermal envelope provisions. So we were just talking about, for instance,
And I get calls all the time, these old buildings that Amazon's buying up to use for warehouses. And they are say, oh no, we're going to be exempt from the building thermal envelope provisions of the code. Well, that old building actually has to be brought up to code when Amazon moves in there with the warehouse, because I can assure you this design rate here, 3.4 BTUs an hour per square foot, it is over that. At least everyone that I have reviewed that, you know, I'm literally 10 different times I've had a code official send me the COMcheck and where Amazon's saying it's exempt, and it doesn't take 2 seconds to figure, no, it's not exempt. It's not even close to exempt. This is it's really a freeze protection and only freeze protection type of scenario typically. And that's basically where this comes from. But so just be careful on the exempt.
For instance, the roof insulation. You would be exempt from that if the energy usage is less than 3 BTU hours per square foot, or 1 watt per square foot, okay? And you don't have to worry about insulation on the walls and the roofs for number 2, those that do not contain conditioned space. So you've got a carport. No, you don't need to insulate your roof for a carport. It's wide open to the atmosphere, okay? And then greenhouses, okay? We're not, typically, greenhouses don't use any conditioned space. They're just kind of protecting the plants. So those are allowed to be exempt, all right? Now here's another one, equipment buildings, and they, if you meet all 5 of those provisions, then you are exempt from building thermal envelope provisions as well. So reminder on the left, if you want to claim an exemption, you must state it in your COMcheck submittal. Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking for. You find the exemption and you state it, and then we're going to be happier. So let's just look at, here's some of the items in the code that you would need to show on your plans. Eyes glaze over. Okay, nobody really wants to be dealing with that, do they? Then it gets worse. Here are some other components and equations, and this is not my idea of fun, okay? So this is why you want COMcheck. You plug these numbers and values into the COMcheck, and it's a win-win. You want it, and so do we. All right, the International Code Council likes COMcheck. Free and easy to use software program. Did I mention free? Yes. Code official must approve the use of specific computer software such as COMcheck? Yeah, not only do we approve it, we require it. The user inputs building areas, efficiencies, and other specifications for the building envelope, mechanical systems, and interior and exterior lighting systems, okay? And it generates a compliance report for the approved plans and a customized field inspection checklist. And it's available for ASHRAE and ECC, and some states, not Texas, where they've worked with COMcheck to come up with a particular state version, okay? But we haven't done that.
And where cities,
Okay, so
where cities, if you're running 30 inspections, you can't expect your inspectors to go through that checklist. That's just not a realistic expectation. However, if your city utilizes third-party energy inspectors that are being paid to do nothing but inspect for energy, I would fully expect them to utilize the checklist.
oh, let's start looking at one. Here is the compliance certificate. There are 4 types, okay? But first, time out. Some info from the U.S. Department of Energy, who really helped with this COMcheck development. The designer inputs into COMcheck from the plans, okay? So, contrapositively, that means if we see a COMcheck item with nothing in the plans, something is wrong, okay? Fair warning. This is what COMcheck looks like when someone is inputting the info from the plans, okay? So you see these components, up at the top, you see project, envelope, interior lighting, exterior lighting, and mechanical. So this scene, they're in the envelope, and they've got roof, skylight, exterior wall, window, door, basement, floor, and they have to input area, square footage, construction details, what the assembly, they pick an assembly, and what have you. So you're inputting things from the plans into this program, and it's quite complex, okay? So this is what it looks like. All right, now back to COMcheck. So this is the first of 5 COMcheck reports, envelope compliance. So right off the bat, the energy code gets entered right away. This is 2015 IACC, it could also be ASHRAE. The climate zone, see that, thumbs up, 2A. Also top right, we're gonna double check the version. So if you're in version 4 at this point in time, you're good. And then asterisk down at the bottom, a tenant build out may not have any envelope items, okay? So again, this is the first one, 5.
And that would be if that envelope had already on the shell, had already been shown to be compliant. A tenant build out without a previous shell envelope would need that envelope.
Then the second of 5 is interior lighting.
Yep.
Yeah, so Jason, that's one of the things that's kind of been going on lately is when you talked about the shell issue, we're starting to really ratchet the shell installations or submittals here so that we get a complete COMcheck. We want that to be completely available so that when the tenant build out comes in, we want to be able to quickly go to our saved version of the shell and compare apples to apples. Yeah. Because for instance, they'll put in potentially less roof insulation over an area that is then going to get built out. And so the tenant would then have to add insulation up at the roof inside in order to meet compliance. So those are the kind of things that are no longer going to be able to slip through the cracks.
Yeah. Shells and tenant finish outs. I mean, you can do them 9 different ways and 9 different building types and 9 different occupancies it is tricky. It's really tricky, but generally, I mean, imagine one of those, Ross, handful of shoe stores and a Ross and whatever, that retail group that comes in. Well, that entire shell needs to comply from day one. And don't, or any of those shells will, we're not, this isn't going to be occupied. No. We have to have a compliant shell from jump. And now 9 times out of 10, the tenants for shells aren't adding insulation, but if they're going to, that it's tricky, and every building will be different, and I don't have a solid gold, stamped 5-star way to make that happen, just because the variety of commercial buildings are so vast and how that works. But it's just something you really need to be diligent on and get on top of. And if you can make that shell compliant in the beginning, like Steve said, and then have that documentation going forward for the finish out, it's super helpful.
Yeah, and then on that same line of thinking, Jason,
Go ahead.
You could also have the third little restaurant build out, on the first floor of a multi-use developer building, right? And so, for heaven's sake, the envelope has been done for years, and you're just, a Chinese restaurant is moving in instead of a Mexican restaurant. So, we may not have any shell concerns at all, any envelope concerns. So that's the kind of the point of all of that.
Right. Okay.
Interior lighting compliance certificate. Third of 5, exterior lighting. So they've got a pretty similar format, as you can see. Fourth of 5, mechanical. Okay. And then finally, 5th of 5 is the inspection checklist, which is what we're going to be talking about at length. Okay, nothing new with the code, nothing new with COMcheck. Plan review will be reviewing them differently is what is new, okay? So we've not pulled any fast ones. So let's walk through some COMchecks. You'll see what the report looks like and what plan review will be looking for, okay? So here we go. This is this is envelope compliance. And so let's start off with roof. The assembly is, that's what comes out of COMcheck, okay? So we check the square footage, and then right off the bat over on the right, the continuous R value is 20, rejected, okay? Right off the bat, in the envelope compliance report, COMcheck shows us a roof R value that does not comply. Rejection number 1. So then
okay,
next
so
is the 3-year aged solar reflectance index.
Go ahead, Steve.
All right, so this is one of the learning curves that we have. So let's start coming clean. In fact, Jason, you even kind of caught me on that back in the day. The first major difference from the video is that this did not go into effect on January the 1st. And so it got pushed back to April the 15th. So, but that's fine. We really felt like we needed to get it out there and make sure and do a more diligent job of waking everybody up to this that's coming, and all that kind of good stuff. And so one of the other things that that we really had to start addressing is that what COMcheck does is it can shift envelope efficiency around the envelope. And so this really was an over assertion on my part that you can reject a set of plans because of a component being less than the prescriptive amount.
In all honesty, Steve, I did the same thing in Granbury when we went from the 06 to the 12. It was just, and it's an easy misunderstanding for plan reviewers and code officials to make. It's, you see this prescriptive table and you see these values, and here we go. We got the thumbs down because it's R20 and I need R25. But look here, what do we have in the wall? Boom, R19, what's required? R13. Anyway, go ahead, Steve.
Yep, so that's exactly it. So we've had a little bit of retraining there, and even though this is still on the website, actually it'll be nice that we'll have this version, Jason, so that people can understand what we got to be looking for.
Awesome. We'll get back to it.
64 is required, and there's nothing in that blurb right there about that. So we have to look somewhere else. So we go to the checklist, and so on the left column of the checklist is the provision, which COMcheck does. You do not have to type that in. Then next to it is the complies, kind of the check boxes. Well, that COMcheck, the user does not do that. COMcheck thinks that's for plan review or inspections. Over on the right are the comments.
See, and to me, this is for design and plan review. I mean, this should be checked twice. And then if it's the third-party energy inspector, I want it checked thrice. I want it hit a third time in the field. Now, I understand, you know, city inspection staff doesn't have time to do that. And frankly, a lot of times city plan review staff doesn't have time to go through every item. But you make the architects and engineers go through every item on the front side. And then ideally, you have see page blank for where this shows this compliance. Floor insulation R value, see page A6 and B7 for this. So you can, to me, the majority of this is on why not make it easier for your plan reviewers to spot check some of this stuff by requiring it completely filled out by the architects and engineers. Would you agree with that, Steve?
Oh, totally. First of all, when you, how many of your people in plan review are certified in the energy code? Okay, we have some, okay, but we have a huge plan review staff, and you know, a lot of them are certified in the IRC and the IBC like they should be, but you know, it's hard to enforce every single person getting certified in every single code, even though some of them, let's face it, it's like a bell curve. Some of them do, and I'm really impressed, but you know, some of them aren't. So at any rate, this COMcheck is what makes it really great for everyone involved to be able to verify, you know, that the code's being complied with. It's just brilliant. I love this part of COMcheck and ResCheck. It's great. Yeah. But you know, if you don't do it, then it's not being done.
No. And just for those of you that don't know, Texas state law, oddly enough, you can inspect electric and have no certification, or, I mean, you can, what do you have to have a state plumbing inspector's license to inspect plumbing by state law. And then the only other by state law requirement is to inspect energy code related items. You need to be ICC certified. And so now granted, we don't have a state energy code police that are going to come haul you away to jail or write you a $5,000 ticket like our Texas State Board of Plumbing examiners will. But you get hauled into a lawsuit or you come up with some issues and you will have wanted to have your staff certified. And I've done this for a handful of cities. I did it for Corpus the other day. They had about 7 folks that were studying for their residential IECC certification. And we quite literally started from page 1 and just quickly as a group, we all had our code books in front of us, and I kind of led a training. And again, anytime I do any of this, you get ICC CUs, but it's super helpful to just go page by page through the provisions of the code. And especially for your newer inspectors or plan reviewers, because a lot of times those folks don't realize that italicized words are always in the definitions chapter, or as you know, when you're taking your ICC certification test and it talks about, you know, ASTM C963, well, you know, to go to chapter 6 real quick. And those are the reference standards. And then when you go to the chapter 6 of the reference standards, it tells you what page in the code book those reference standards are quoted. So, you know, you get a question on your ICC test and it talks about a reference standard, boom, you go to chapter 6. Okay, that standard's listed on page 42. Boom, turn to page 42 and you know, oh, that's a standard for this. Okay, the answer is C, and move on. I'm happy to give detailed, basically IECC test prep for your staff as well. So again, add that to the list of trainings that I'm currently funded for, and I'm happy to provide for free.
And the user inputs the SRI and references the drawings here, okay? Which you can see the blow up is where I've input that note, and the full scale on the right, there was nothing, okay? So on this particular project, I went to the drawings, and so you can see the kind of a roof plan on the right-hand side, and there's a note, and I've blown that up and put it up top. And so it says the note 21 says Duralast single ply roof membrane over minimum R20 rigid insulation board, blah, blah, blah. Nothing about the SRI, okay, is MIA, missing in action. So I went to the internet, pulled down the Duralast information, and lo and behold, there's some solar reflectance index information. That would have been good to have been submitted, okay? So here we go. Envelope compliance failure. COMcheck asserts the roof complies with the code, but the plans don't show compliance. The plans call for a Duralast roof. Duralast has 3 types.
And just quickly, how Steve mentioned how he learned about envelope trade-offs, and I mentioned how I do that. Gil chimed in and says, electrical inspector means a person certified by the International Association of Electrical Inspectors, or ICC. And that's actually out of Title 8, Regulation of Environmental Industrial Trades, Chapter 1305, Electricians, Subchapter A, General Provisions. So evidently that is in state law. I had no idea it was. Thank you, Gil.
Types of roof membrane and 4 colors. The roof color is not mentioned. The SRI is not mentioned. The SRI.
Oh, maybe that's not a mandatory requirement. He chimed back in. I guess we're trying to get it as a mandatory requirement as it's not yet. But anyway, I don't want to get off topic. Let's get back to COMcheck.
SRI depends on the roof color. Is it the plan reviewer's job to pull the manufacturer's cut sheet from the internet to determine code compliance? Cut to that chase. No. It is the applicant's job to show compliance on the plans. All right, so here's the inspection checklist. Let's kind of take a look at what COMcheck expects. Up at the top, there is this blurb that I've blown up down at the bottom. Requirements. 0.0% were addressed directly in the COMcheck software. Text in the comments assumption column is provided by the user in the COMcheck requirements screen. For each requirement, the user certifies that a code requirement will be met and how that is documented. I've highlighted that in yellow, and how that is documented, or that an exception is being claimed. Okay, notice, or the exception is being claimed. Where compliance is itemized in a separate table, a reference to that table is provided. So you could provide something at the end of the COMcheck, and you could refer to that in the comment and assumption column, okay? Okay, so when we look at that blurb up top on the report, and it has 0.0%, that means no comments were input in the COMcheck, which is a pretty low effort task, okay? This is going to be an automatic rejection by the permit tech in pre-screen. 0, rejected. Adios. All right, so let's take a look. There's about, what, 6 to 7 pages or so of the COMcheck inspection checklist, okay? Multiple pages that address envelope, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and commissioning, okay? Very helpful, very good. So if you don't complete the comments in the inspection checklist, then prepare to see this rejection comment. A completed inspection checklist is a required component of the COMcheck submission, which is required for a building permit. For each inspection checklist item, the applicant explains how the requirement will be met with how it is documented in the plans, or which exception is being claimed, okay? Got a choice of 2. Pick one and put it in there. All right, we just so you know, we've done this, updated the residential checklist for single family. That energy report inspection checklist is required, and we will be updating the commercial as well. Okay, so now that was envelope that we already went over. Now we're going to get into building mechanical systems, okay, which is 5 parts: general, economizers, HVAC, hydronic and multi-zone equipment, and refrigeration equipment, okay? So this is what one of the first provisions are regarding that, and that is design loads that need to be determined in accordance with another ASHRAE standard, 183. And so let's look at the mechanical compliance certificate. Again, the energy code for this one was 2015 IECC. It could be ASHRAE. And so there's some mechanical systems here. I've blown it up on this slide. And you see that they are for heating and cooling. We have a capacity of 150,000 BTUHs with a proposed efficiency, blah, blah, blah. So this is indicating somewhat of capacities regarding the building loads. All right, so then we go to the inspection checklist, and we see that part of the code that on the left that COMcheck puts in. HVAC systems and equipment capacity does not exceed calculated loads. Okay.
And ideally on that page, it has a table of all the equipment in there with all of those capacities totaled, and then showing that that total meets the total of the load calculation, right? You're marrying those two things together. Why not require that on the plans? Oh, dang it. What did I do there? Hold on. There we go.
Okay. So it was blank, but this is where the user would put the page number where the load calcs are shown, or potentially following the COMcheck. Okay, the loads could be in, you know, just tabular form or something, you know, whatever the engineer used. All right. So back to this chapter 1 item. I'm going to be referring to this a few times. These 12 items are required by law to be clearly delineated. Okay. And there you go, item 4, mechanical system design criteria. Okay, that's what the loads are, right? So are we going to double check your loads? Well, let me say this. We are expecting you to professionally establish the loads. We expect to see information on the plans to comply with the law. And is that enough of an answer? So here's another one, pumps. Pumps that circulate water between a heater and a storage tank have controls that limit operations from startup to less than or equal to 5 minutes after end of heating cycle. Okay, so that's a code provision that I didn't show you, but it's in the code. And that's how COMcheck deals with it. And on this particular inspection checklist, we got exception, requirement does not apply. Well, bad news. There's no exceptions in this code provision. So I can't even believe that was there. Anyway. Then for this,
could it have been there because there were no pumps that circulate water between a heater and a storage tank?
Yeah, it could be. And so the proper note would be there are no pumps that circulate water in the scope of this project.
Makes sense to me. Fair enough.
This particular project, guess what? There's a heater and a storage tank in the plans. So how did that happen? Requirement does not apply. So that is bogus. So this one's going to get rejected for that. So let's kind of keep going through examples so you can see what we're talking about. Heated water supply piping conforms to pipe length and volume requirements. Refer to section details, says the COMcheck on the left. So we have a note, exception, requirement does not apply. COMcheck does that. They have this exception, you know, throwdown that you can put in there, and that is not sufficient. Okay, what we're asking is which exemption. So you're going to need to type that in there. You want an exemption? Type it in. Which exemption it is. Now, next on the after that is location on plans / spec. M1.0 mechanical specs and M2.0 schedules and layout. That's a good comment, okay? Don't have a problem with that. The reviewer will now go to sheet M1.0 and M2.0, and they're gonna look at that. And they're gonna see if there is some sort of notation about the heated water supply piping, okay? There's gonna be, the engineer is gonna have something that's gonna convey that this project complies with that part of the code. That's what they do. Now, meanwhile, for some reason, there was 2 of these items. As you can see, they're duplications. And on the second one, it says requirement will be met. Okay, COMcheck does this, and FYI, it is not sufficient. That is not going to cut it. Okay, so here's a really interesting inspection checklist that we had. And it has 100% were addressed directly in the COMcheck software. Pre-screen is going to go good to go, okay? They're not going to reject this COMcheck. We have an inspection checklist, and it shows 100% were addressed in the COMcheck. Now, If you were
Hey,
to
Jason.
do this, requirement will be met.
Okay, so this is one of the things that changed. After we did this workshop, I had extensive training with our pre-screen folks, and they were completely brought up to speed that this is not going to work. And so the idea that this might get you past the pre-screen went away, because they were trained to see that just having the requirement will be met component and not seeing examples of where the stuff is in the plans, that was going to be a fail.
Good. Yeah, you again require the comments to detail where in the plans this stuff is located to make life easier on your planning reviewers, number two, but number one, to make sure the architect and engineer have taken account into all of these code requirements into the design.
That requirement will be met thing, then the plan reviewer is going to bounce you. Okay, it's not sufficient. That is not indicating where on the drawings this is showing compliance. Okay, and requirement will be met is an assertion where you need to actually show the compliance. So this is a perfect opportunity to fill in the comments to show compliance. All right, so repeat, requirement will be met is not sufficient. You need to type something else in. That is not going to fly. All right, so let's, anatomy of a failure. Let's take a look at some of these. Here's the one about the load calcs. Requirement will be met. Nothing else, rejected. My suggestion, note which sheet has the load calcs or note their location after the COMcheck in the energy forms folder, okay? Here's the interior lighting power calculations, blah, blah, blah. Requirement will be met. Nothing else, fail. Suggestion, note which sheets have the electrical info, okay? All right, C406, the additional energy efficiency package options. Requirement will be met. We're not buying it. Nothing else, rejected. Suggestion, note which sheets have this info, okay? All right, pumps that circulate water between a heater and a storage tank. We've gone over that already. Requirement does not apply. Nothing else, rejected. State the specific exception or exemption in your comment if you're going to go that route. All right, so one of the things that you see on these lists are things like that are a little bit diversionary. Plumbing, rough-in inspection. Okay, guess what? This is now also plan review, not just inspection. So we need everybody to hopefully retain this idea that it's called an inspection checklist, but it's also now by the City of Houston a plan review checklist as well. Okay, everybody on board? So heated water supply piping conforms to pipe length and volume. I mean, some people might not even have had to explain this before, okay? You're gonna have to now. We need to see that you have complied with the provision. How can you succinctly indicate that, okay? So requirement will be met is not gonna get it. And I would, if I was an engineer, I would have a standard note and I would put it on my note sheets or something. And then in COMcheck, I would put the location for that note in the plans. And then our plan reviewer will look there and double check. To be clear, our inspectors have been and will continue to inspect the project to compare with the approved plans. So it is going to be used as an inspection checklist. The completed COMcheck, which is based on the plans, will be part of the approved plans. An incomplete COMcheck will not be approved, nor will the plans until the COMcheck is approved. Okay, so COMcheck is going to hold you up. Let's take a look at a kitchen exhaust hood from the drawings. Pretty entertaining. So there's kind of that story. There's like a cut through view of it, blah, blah. So this one had the model number and exhaust CFM and supply CFM, etc. In the provision, it says replacement air introduced directly into the exhaust hood cavity shall not be greater than 10% of the hood's exhaust airflow rate. So back the napkin here, exhaust CFM 1170, supply CFM 900, looks like 77% of exhaust. That's way more than 10%. And then for more, I went to the internet because for some reason it wasn't submitted, the model, and it's shown to be exhaust only. So total fail. Go to the COMcheck inspection checklist, and this engineer, this is hilarious, went ahead and printed out the reports so that he could put hand X'd, checkbox, and that's not the intention of COMcheck anyway. Didn't type in anything, and this is where we would need a commentary clearly articulating compliance with the code section, as the unit is labeled exhaust only and the drawings indicate excessive supply. So that is going nowhere. Here's another quick one, just looking at provisions and stuff. Duct and plenum insulation, we need R6 insulation, etc. And so we would look on the inspection checklist, find that provision about the insulation of ducts and plenums, and etc. As you can see, no comment. Okay, so duct insulation levels are not mentioned here or on the plan, so that would be a rejection. In spite of the engineer saying it complies, okay? The fact that you say it complies or whatever will be met is not going to get it. All right, back to this, the 12 items. Look at that. Duct sealing, duct and pipe insulation and location required on the drawings. All right. Here's another one that's really getting into the weeds. Motor nameplate horsepower. It says right in the provision to be indicated on the construction documents. Okay, nothing ambiguous about that. Why? Total fan system motor nameplate horsepower. In the commentary, it says these calculations are typically completed by the mechanical engineer of record and should be verified during the plan review. Okay, so we need this. We need this to do our job. All right, now let's look at refrigeration equipment. Refrigeration equipment shall have an energy use in kilowatt hours per day not greater than the values of this table here. Okay, so at the risk of getting in the weeds with that, here's a submittal that was with a fast food restaurant. Manitowoc is the manufacturer, and they had I think it was a 3-page or 4-page submittal, which was put into project docs. Completely absent from this sheet was anything about kilowatt hours per day. Completely absent. So that is a fail. I can't believe that a manufacturer would actually do that. Go to the plans, and there's something in the mechanical drawings about refrigeration, but this is more like about refrigerant and a freon leak detection system, and not a word about the refrigeration equipment kilowatt hours per day, completely absent. So adios, this is a goner. Oh, how could we possibly detect that something's wrong? There's the freezer and there's the cooler on the plan, okay? All right, so then to really go on, this walk-in cooler, freezer, refrigerator, here's 2 of the provisions. Here's 3 through 5, okay, with a couple of them being the R value of the walls and the floors. And back to the
and so look at that walk-in coolers and refrigerator of a floor value of not less than R25, just framing up and field fabricating some sort of freezer with no, it gets pretty particular. So you need the page number on the plan set where they're showing the details of these R values.
The information sheet, it does actually capture the R values of the walls and the floors. Yay. As we keep going, 9 here, anti-sweat heaters need to be no more than 7.1 watts per square foot. The handout has this, does show compliance with that, hooray. Then finally we get down to the 11th and last provision. So the health submittal sheet addressed 3 out of the 11 requirements. Is that sufficient to indicate compliance? Absolutely not. That's a fail. Go to the inspection checklist for where they could have, indicated something and the engineer said it complies. Oh my gosh. Now, sadly, this is actually not there. So it was saying something else complies, the economizer, sorry. The inspection report actually skips those part of the provisions, okay? So, bad news. Wow, COMcheck doesn't seem to have an inspection checklist item for the coolers and freezers. Uh-oh.
Hey, Jason.
Unfortunately, you.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, it does. Okay. I was really going through, I don't know what, couldn't find them, going through a bunch of reports. And so this one kind of got away from me, and I made the wrong assumption that COMcheck doesn't cover it. It does. I mean, it really does. It's COMcheck has a inspection checklist item for coolers and freezers. So it is in there. It is very helpful. And the user needs to fill that out should they have coolers and freezers in the project.
Awesome. Thanks.
Or someone will have to make up for that. They must be shown to comply with the law. If the mechanical consultant somehow doesn't do coolers or freezers, the project will not be approved until someone does. So, oops. Now, you could actually you could inject that into COMcheck. So here's this one about the load calcs, right? How about adding a note about the refrigeration equipment? You put that in there, all right? Then our plan reviewer will go there and check, okay? Why? Refrigeration equipment works much the same way as an air conditioner, except instead of depositing the heat gain during condensation outside the building, the heat is deposited inside the building, okay? There's usually no flue from a cooler, a freezer, or a refrigerator to the outside. So you are dumping that heat into the building, and then the mechanical system has to deal with that, and the loads are increased, and we need more air conditioning, okay? So then we get into fan control. That's a thing. Fans, generally the largest energy using component of HVAC systems, okay? Boom. So the energy code is concerned about this, okay? Oh, back to this page. Anybody sick of this slide yet? Item number 8, fan motor horsepower and controls. The energy code is deeply concerned about fans and the sizes and etc. All right, moving on to electrical power and lighting. The best is yet to come. So exterior, lighting, we have to develop a budget. And so you get a basic site allowance depending on what kind of zone you're in. And then there are tradable services with this table. The next slide shows non-tradable services. So you kind of get into this whole thing, and there's, increments of watts per square foot, blah, blah, blah. This is what this looks like in the COMcheck screen. It's quite organized, and putting this in is actually slightly tedious, but really not that difficult. This is what the report looks like, the exterior lighting compliance certificate. So for instance, the first one is parking lot lights and parking area. And you start off with B, quantity, and that is in square feet. We need the parking area, and this engineer for some reason put 11 square feet. Whoa. So this is the site plan. Does this look like 11 square feet of parking to you? No, I don't think so. It identifies the exterior light fixtures and what kind they are, and so that part's good. The sign, by the way, speaking of exemption, the pylon sign, like whatever fast food organization this is, that is exempt. So meanwhile, here's my version of filling out the form completely. As it turns out, there was 13,503 square feet of parking area, not 11. So interestingly, the 1,300 from the table, you add up the wattage of the watts allowed per unit, indicating the tradable and what have you. You add that up to 2095 watts, add that to the 1,300, you have a total budget of 3,395. And interestingly, when down below, because this is a blow up, the total wattage of the fixtures actually complies, okay? 1,032 watts is very good. It's below the 3,395 budget. It would comply, but we are not going to allow that sort of bogus computation on a compliance certificate, okay? So that a rejection note is going to be the COMcheck was incorrectly computed for the allowed exterior lighting power component. Please correct and resubmit, okay? So then let's get to the additional efficiency package options. So this is where it's called out in the code. There's 6 of them. You need a little bit of an upgrade from the basic code. Pick one, pick the easiest.
Hey, Jason.
It doesn't matter to us. So
Actually, this would
Go
be a
ahead.
good time for me to share my screen on our
Okay.
guideline that we've developed since then.
Perfect. Go ahead.
All right, so let me try to do. Yeah. Okay. So I'm sharing this. Do you see the
Yep.
guideline?
Mhm.
Okay. So this is what we have now. If you go to our website, which is HoustonPermittingCenter.org. So Houston Permitting Center, all run together.org. The easiest way, and this is what I tell people on the phone that are calling me, because actually there's another great story after this that everybody's going to love. So I can say, go up to the top right once you're in there and do a search and just type in COMcheck. Okay. So then you go to the page there where you scroll down, there's like 6 COMcheck items, and you go to the guideline. So if you were to read through this real quick on the screen, you'll see that basically this is just a nice summary of what we've been talking about, this whole time. And so, here we are, explain the COMcheck reports. There's 5 of them. The inspection checklist is required. The compliance certificates, one of the things that I didn't really go over in depth is you have to fill everything out.
Yeah.
No
Oh, that's
blanks.
nice. So it kind of summarizes the level of detail you're looking for.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So
So
it
yeah,
has to all be filled out. We've also said that the envelope certificate requires input of specific fenestration product ID numbers. So that is very important for being able to determine if the assemblies, are actually compliant. So this is a murky situation, and we've kind of had to have some discussions with some architects that, are trying to do the right thing with this product ID information. But at any rate, so that's kind of a work in progress. And so then we have this section on the inspection checklist, and everything that you've kind of heard is here distinctly called out and succinctly called out, I believe. And there's that. And then in addition, with the mechanical compliance certificate, what we do here, which I hadn't done in that previous version, is we suggest using the standard 183 informative appendix B format, okay, which makes it real easy for the engineer to just print it out, from what he did from the load calculation software that he used, okay, and just dump it into the project docs subfolder. So that's, completely local to Houston. So it's somewhere else where maybe you're not using project docs, that could be included with the COMcheck form, for instance. Okay. And then we have a commissioning form, which we're going to talk about a little bit as this recording goes on, but then we explain that they need to put that in there. And then we have where you can download COMcheck down at the bottom. So we have this succinctly done in one page. And so you're welcome to take that, do whatever you want to do to make it unique to your jurisdiction. And,
I'm assuming that's a PDF. Do you, actually, I'll get it off and convert it to Word, and I'll send it to everyone. So it'll be easier to convert. You'll get everyone. I'll send you a copy of this with the CEUs or with the course evaluation. So just so everybody knows, you don't have to.
Okay.
Make it easier for them. All right, we'll get back to it.
All right.
So here we had for this particular project,
I forgot the other story.
The envelope.
Were you chiming back in? No.
Yeah, I was chiming back in because I forgot the rest of that kind of interesting story. Okay, so I'm gonna really do some self-aggrandizement here and pat myself in the back. But let me just tell you, this is hugely funny. I, Steve Stelzer, am now in a standard rejection comment. It's so hilarious. I can't believe it. But a couple of our mechanical plan reviewers now have a standard rejection when they see that a COMcheck was not done right. And so they have, for any questions, contact Steve Stelzer and they give my email and my phone number. I love this. So, you know, at first I thought, oh man, this is lame. I can't believe they're doing that. This is just, no, stop. And then I realized, wait a minute, this is a feedback loop that I didn't really have access to. This is how I can do more outreach. I mean, this was stunning. So I'm getting these calls from engineers because basically what the plan reviewer has basically said, read between the lines, hey, you need the COMcheck, needs to be done right. And, you know, I don't have time to explain it all to you. Call this guy, right? And I'm not an expert in it. I'm not going to be able to go through every single nuance. I'm just checking my plans for the, you know, to see the COMcheck stuff, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's the subtext that he's not really explaining. And he's saving himself that time so that we, you know, we can get our plans reviewed quicker, right? So they call me. And, you know, I've got this down, obviously. And so the engineer gets a crash course on how to do the COMcheck in like 10 minutes or less. And it all worked out great. So there you have it.
Yeah, so I would just, we have 125 attendees on the webinar. So make sure that all of y'all send all your architects and engineers to Steve as well. We'll keep him busy.
Right. And so he called out the reduced interior lighting power, okay, which is probably the easiest one. Then the engineer of the same project puts in high efficiency HVAC. Uh-oh. Then we go to the inspection checklist and we get the engineer saying it complies and no comments. And so how in the world could anyone verify that C406 compliance was done? We can't, so it's rejected. Now, interestingly, just so you know, tenant spaces also have to have this section C406 with one of these upgrades, okay? So let's take a look at a tenant space build out because they are gonna take COMchecks, all right? So the good news is if you don't touch the skin or the envelope, then you would not have to submit an envelope compliance certificate. You still have to submit a COMcheck because there's 3 out of 4 certificates, okay? So you would do the interior lighting. Your interior build out is probably gonna have lighting, I'm guessing. So meanwhile, this one did not have an additional efficiency package on the front page like they normally do. Then looked at the exterior lighting, okay? Not a word about the additional efficiency package. And then the mechanical compliance certificate.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the nuances that I've discovered since I did this originally is that the C406 additional efficiency package is for a new build out. Okay, so it's for the first build out in a shell, if you will. So
first, now, well, hold on now. So depends on, so typically what you will see is the reduced lighting power. That's the cheapest and easiest. Use decent LEDs throughout. But you wouldn't be able, so imagine we have a shell with 20 occupancies, right? And they're all, you know, 20 equal spaces. Well, you can't do more efficient lighting in one of those 20 spaces and meet the additional efficiency package for all 20 of them.
Well, okay, but my point, the point that I'm trying to make.
Missing your point. Go ahead.
Yeah, my point is if you've got for instance, a restaurant going into a tenant space that was formerly a restaurant. Okay, so it's second generation.
Oh, gotcha.
You don't have to do the additional efficiency package. Only for the first tenant build out.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Yeah.
Again, nothing, not good. All right. Then we go to the inspection checklist and there's no comment. Adios. I'm sorry. This build out is toast. Not going to happen. So then we got the next and final is commissioning. Okay. So incredible exceptions. Okay. And that is there's a size threshold. Basically, just for a rule of thumb, buildings, freestanding buildings smaller than a Walgreens, you know, that you've seen all over town would be exempt. Okay. So you do not have to commission small buildings. All right. So, but we're going to see your square footage. We're going to see what the mechanical equipment capacity is. And if it's larger than those, you have to do it. So might as well put it in there. So the commissioning plan has to be developed by a registered design professional. So we need to see some.
And I have a hyperlink to some really handy ASHRAE checklists that cover commissioning A through Z. If you're interested in those, please shoot me an email and I can give you the hyperlink to those checklists. In the 2021 Energy Code, that those are actually required, not all of them, but there's actually a checklist, a commissioning related checklist that is now required in the 2021. Whereas the 2015, it's a little fuzzy. You just need the letter from the owner and a narrative description, and it's not as concrete in the 2015. The 2021 really kind of crystallizes some of the requirements.
Something there, not just Joe Blow. And so there's more to commissioning. There's system adjusting and balancing, air system balancing, blah, blah, blah. As you can see down at the bottom, there's an exception. So, people can take advantage of exceptions, hydronic systems balancing and some exceptions. Notice pump motors of 5 horsepower or less, blah, blah, blah. And so you're just going to have to get into it. I'm sorry. But the preliminary commissioning report has to be completed and certified by the design professional or an approved agency. We need to see that. And the acceptance of the report right here in the code, that the code official receives a letter of transmission.
And so the 2012, 2015, and 2018 code, basically all that's required on commission, I mean, not all that's required, but the primary thing that's required is at permit, you get that preliminary commissioning report. And basically the idea is that the owner and contractor from the jump are made aware that, hey, commissioning is a code requirement. I mean, now do you have to follow up post C? You can't commission an air conditioner in the winter. You've got to wait for a few months and commission that thing when it's warmer outside. Well, are you going to require some sort of report 4 months after CO as a code official? Of course not. What you require as a code official is, hey, building owner, hey, contractor, give me a preliminary commissioning report so that I know that commissioning is required. You don't have to follow up and dot every I and cross every T throughout the commissioning process. Now it is within your jurisdiction as a code official, right prior to CO, hey, send me all your commissioning inspections and documentation thus far, put it in your building file and move on. But as far as code requirements go in the 15, that preliminary commissioning report is, you want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Submittal from the building owner acknowledging that the building owner or owner's authorized agent has received the preliminary commissioning report, okay? And this is to be considered acceptable for a final inspection, okay? Adios, it's in the code. We have got to do this as building code enforcement. And hopefully there's nothing unclear about that, okay? So there are documentation requirements. So any project large enough to require commissioning, there's going to be things in the plans we need to see. If not, rejection, okay? We don't have to have the whole plan submitted, but there needs to be documentation in there. The code is clear. So COMcheck covers this. These are, commissioning items right there. Look at those provisions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Except, yeah, one of them looks like a duplicate. But anyway, so there they are. If it's blank and there's no comment, we're out of here. All right, so in summary, beginning January 1st, plans submitted with incomplete COMcheck reports will be rejected at pre-screen, okay? If you have enough quantity, then the plan reviewers will judge the quality of the comments in the reports, okay? So requirement will be met is not acceptable. Exemptions and exceptions must be specific, and comments must locate the info in the plans. So those.
If you take nothing else away from this entire hour and a half today, take a screenshot of that right there, because this really sums up 90% of what we're talking about.
Those are the 3 items. Requirement will be met is not acceptable actually by itself. Okay, we're not going to turn you down because that's in there. But if that's it and you're relying on requirement will be met, that one's not going to be acceptable. Exemptions and exceptions must be specific, not just, there's an exemption. Not going to work. Comments must locate the info in the plans, or probably should have said, be a specific exemption and exception notation. Okay? So that's it. That is, we got, wow, got that done in 50 minutes.
And we still have 7 minutes of Q&A, but we're at our 90 minutes. So if you need to hop off now, no worries whatsoever. Feel free to type your questions in the chat. We've answered a handful of them along the process, but feel free to type in any questions in the chat or the Q&A, or just turn all your folks over to Steve right now. No, seriously though. I am going to go ahead and play it. We'll go through the 7 minutes of Q&A. Obviously, please feel free to hang out and listen to the original questions. But, you know, I know you folks are busy, so if you need to hop off, feel free to hop off. And of course, happy to entertain the questions as well. I mean, send me an email anytime. I'm happy. I understand you don't have time to hold hands of your architects and engineers. I'm happy to relay what it is you're looking for. Happy to intervene any way that I can. We'll go ahead and get to the 7 minutes Q&A.
That's amazing. Let's see, do we have any questions? Let's look at the chat. Any?
Not yet. So for the attendees, if you haven't seen it yet, there's an icon with 2 sort of looking chat messages and a question mark over it. That's where you can enter your questions.
I think we ought to just let everybody have the rest of the day off, Steve. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I'm ready to take it. I'm just like, wow, mission accomplished for me.
No, I think it's
all right. Our
valuable.
first question here: can you provide some guidance on what to provide for a shell spec building that does not have an interior build out in the permit drawings?
There we go. What did I say?
This is tricky. I'm curious what you did say.
You're on mute, Steve.
Oh, you were on mute. And that's why I think it's valuable to go back. We need to go back through this about once a year, Steve, and just, you know, and re-record it and interject along the way, because we'll both have learned a handful of things a year from now. And, you know, frankly, we'll have been wrong about some things that some architects and engineers will point out. And then we will learn some things from our plan review staff that, oh, hey, did we think about A, B, or C? And I know you're constantly in contact with COMcheck trying to figure out, you know, where it is they've gone wrong. And maybe there's some new revelations along those fronts. So you go ahead and pencil it in on your calendar about 9 months, a year from now, and let's do this again.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean, there's a couple of things that I'm stewing with right now. One of them is, you know, doing the envelope, and there's a certain requirement to have something from MEP done, or you can't print your envelope. And I've got some architects stumbling over that. Let's see, what is another one? Because I said there was a couple of things. Oh yeah, I'm really peeved about what one of the appendix items in ASHRAE seems to have a loophole for insulation and metal studs. So I'm going round and round about that, and I still haven't gotten anywhere. Basically, the COMcheck people are saying, well, it's a code, and so I'm on a code council committee, subcommittee actually, and I'm actually working on that. So at some point, I'm going to really have some breakthrough, and I will be the first to let you know, Jason, when that happens, because I'm really wanting to see a little bit better envelope when we have metal studs.
And Michael asked, is there a rewatch link? Yes. So all of our webinars, typically the following day, but this will go up on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. I'm trying to get us to 500 subscribers. But yeah, now you can't you can't get CEUs by watching it on your own. You had to have watched it live. But if you need to go back and, Michael or somebody just mentioned that, hey, I had to catch a phone call or whatever, you're watching this at work and somebody comes to the permit clerk and you've got to step away from the webinar for 15 minutes and go deal with the customer and come back to it. You missed a little section of it. All of these do go up on our YouTube channel, and you can, whether it's review or you miss something or whatever, it is available. What's going on? Oh, there we go. Well, I guess
There we
That
go.
should be good.
All right. Yeah, well, I was trying to unmute myself. I couldn't. Good question. I did not exactly outline that, did I? All right. Building shell. All right. Yeah, we must have some sort of process on that. Basically, the building envelope would be required, and there's going to be, remember we talked about roof, walls, those kind of things, leaking, so the building envelope is going to need to be completely shown to comply based on the whatever occupancy, whatever you're able to get, whatever you're trying to permit, is going to have to be clearly indicated in the building envelope.
9 times out of 10, tenant finish outs do not add to, they are using that existing building thermal envelope of the shell.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to get by with, Jason.
Well, but if the shell complies, why would the building finish out need more shell than that, or more? The tenant finish out shouldn't require higher levels of insulation for the building thermal envelope than the shell did.
Well, what we have is an awful lot of office warehouse facilities that do shell
Gotcha.
build out, and then they come back later when they lease out the space. And
on an office warehouse, absolutely. You might have 2 or 3 walls that need to incorporate. And then that's why it's so important that original building thermal, that original wall is a decent wall. Otherwise they're going, you don't want an R40 wall in between the warehouse space and the office, because you're trying to make up for some sort of skimpy envelope. I mean, maybe they need to, well, you could do it a variety of ways. Yeah, it's just finish outs and shells are tricky because they're just the nature of them.
Yeah, and that's where we have the most problem is these office warehouses. I mean, that's just, they're all over the place and they just go up like crazy. And so they're the big discussion item. And, a lot of of course, Class A stuff, they're going to design for the future occupancy. And they're, you're right. There's an office building, it's going to be all designed that way because you're going to have people moving in and building out their offices. So nobody wants to, in a high rise to deal with the envelope. So yeah, makes perfect sense there.
Yeah. And Michael asks, any special exterior or demising wall insulation requirements when cryo units are next to them? Metal studs. So obviously the metal studs conduct heat, and I would think cryo units are going to have some pretty specific manufacturer instructions. And then ultimately you're going to have generalized building thermal envelope requirements in the code. The code doesn't have anything special about cryo units, but to me, I don't know. I mean, it's almost that's how cannabis legalization has brought all these grow room and lighting requirements and stuff into the code. And it wouldn't surprise me if at some point cryo units are categorized. and maybe the definition of refrigeration or freezers and how cold they get, maybe it falls into that category and you need some of those R value requirements. But to my knowledge, the code doesn't have any specific cryo unit requirements.
Exterior lighting. If so, then that would have to be submitted. But I also would surmise, but we will come up with something. I will get with my plan review team and in the very near future, and we will have this on the website along with this information, what we specifically need for a shell building. I appreciate that, and I think that's a very good request. It seems like with the shell building, there probably is some shell mechanical information. So I would just offhand be guessing that there would be some information in the mechanical COMcheck. Okay, and interior lighting, it seems like probably not going to see too much there. Potentially, if there's any common space lighting that the code addresses, that we may want to see some items there. Okay, for instance, you know, there's a code requirement for exit signs. Okay, no more than 5 watts. So that would be an item. I imagine you're going to have exit signs in the corridors and exit ways and what have you, stairwells. So those things could go in. Okay, but you know, I think you want a thorough list of requirements, and we may be able to develop something like that.
Yeah, and then Jason,
Another
interestingly
question
on
here.
Yeah, go
that,
ahead.
believe it or not, we have, I don't know why I didn't snap to it, but we have a guideline for shell buildings. So it's too bad I didn't have that at the top of my, on the top of my head, because that person that I was answering the questions, you know, and I was kind of dancing around there, but yeah, we have a guideline. It's pretty clear about what they have to do.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Does the COMcheck need to be in the documents folder if they're in the plans?
Yes. Okay. So that person might have missed that slide. Okay. They can be in, it's permissible to be in the drawings. Not a problem with that, but that's not where our permit techs are checking for pre-screen. Pre-screen. Who's that? Elmer Fudd? At any rate, no, they need to be also in the folder in project docs, energy forms. Okay, must be. Otherwise, you're going to get rejected, and that would be highly inconvenient.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is, believe it or not, our permit techs got pretty savvy about that, and they can find them in the drawings, and so even if they're not in that folder, they're not getting rejected if they are in the drawing. So, you know, we've gotten better as far as that goes. But I was just trying to, you know, lay the groundwork to, you know, minimize rejections, if you will.
Gotcha.
All right, another question here just about if we're going to post the recording and the presentation, and where can you find the COMcheck software program?
Oh, that was a good idea. I wonder why I didn't have a slide on that.
That's what Google's for.
Yes, that's the DOE. DOE has a location. You can just Google COMcheck download, and boom, you're going to come up with it. I believe the best. It may be a couple of different sources. I would be very careful of some, you know, third-party looking, you know,
There's just
weird
one. It'll come up.
internet site. I would go through the Department of Energy and follow their links. And they have COMcheck and ResCheck available for free download. Okay, so depending on if you got a residential or a commercial project for energy code compliance, you can download either or both. I have them both on my machine.
That's all the questions we have so far. There's still a few.
Awesome. Awesome. And if you're doing work in Oklahoma, I've been told that the city of Norman, Oklahoma has the 2006 COMcheck on an old desktop down in the basement. So if you're designing for Oklahoma, which is still on the 2006 for commercial, it is not available online, but you can go down into the basement in Norman and they'll let you use it there. I joke about that. Do bath steam systems, saunas need to be considered? There are no additional requirements that I recall for steam systems or saunas. It makes me want to go to the YMCA and get in their steam sauna this afternoon. There are no additional requirements for those, Michael, that I remember in the code. That was it. So again, for your CEUs, Kathy will send out a course evaluation. Just send out the course evaluation and she will send you a CEU certificate. Steve, thanks for giving us a reprise of this initial recording. And like I said, we need to do it again about every 9 months to a year, because I'm sure you will uncover some things and we'll learn some things along the way. Thanks for joining us, everyone, this morning. Steve, I'll give you the parting word and then I'll shut her down.
Oh, well, just thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun. And I think I'm going to make it shorter for next year.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone, and have a good day. We'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.